Let me introduce Michael B. Alexander, our esteemed president.
Good morning and welcome to campus on this beautiful fall day. My job is just to kick this thing off and get you welcome. Those of you who were there last night, I'm sure you had enough of me talking already. All I want to say is we're off to another wonderful start on the academic year. We have the largest enrollments in the history of the college, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. I'm very excited. You've heard at past meetings about the challenges of retention and some of the efforts we've been making to address that. And we this year what we call the first year cohort retention, that means the number of people who started last fall that came back this fall, is the highest since the college has been co-ed at 74.2%. That's not quite what our goal is. Our goal is 75, but we're getting close. And our goal is to get there and stay there. But so it looks like some of our efforts are taking hold, and we hope that that's going to continue. So as a result, we have for the first time over 2,000 students at Lasell College, well over 2,000 students, about 400 graduate students and 1,667 undergraduate students. So it's the momentum continues. The upward trajectory of Lasell College is in good stead. And you see that reflected on the physical campus, of course. There's been construction here going on here as long as I've been here. This past summer, we kind of half renovated Woodland Hall, our largest residence hall, renovating half the bathrooms, replacing all the sewage and sourcing pipes in the building, new elevator in the building, sprinklers throughout the building. And next summer we finished that with the other half of the bathrooms, new roof, new boiler and heating system, and really to get our largest residence hall up to code and really in good condition is quite an achievement. Also last summer we renovated Carpenter House, and if you have any chance to go see it, it's really an amazing thing. It's just beautiful. We took all the old leaded windows, some of which had stained glass in them, took them out and sent them to an expert who fixed them all up and sent them back. So all the windows have been restored, all the woodwork's been restored, new kitchen, it's just beautiful. That kind of activity that's going on campus, both the growth and the renovations, the new buildings on campus, none of that could happen without the contributions of people like you. You're the ones who make that happen. As you know, these are difficult times in higher education. There are headwinds buffeting us in all directions, mostly external in the case of Lasell College, coming from the government, coming from the economy, coming from globalization, coming from technological changes and innovations that are being disruptive to our whole business. We have been managing through that better than some other small colleges, but we're affected by it. Yet we endeavor and work hard to make sure that we're creating programs and activities that contribute in a significant way to the intellectual and personal development of each and every student. That's really the core of what we're doing, and you enable us to do that. So I thank you for your support. I thank you for coming, and I ask that you continue to support us in the way that you have, because we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Well, we have an interesting program for you today, and I look forward to seeing it. I hope you do too. Have a great day. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, I'm Jim Oster. I'm the Academic Vice President. So I'd like to lead off the day with some ideas about education and growth, based primarily, because I think largely what we do with the college is based primarily on some of the ideas expressed by John Dewey, the great American philosopher John Dewey, who's always been very important to me. And since the topic today is lifelong learning, I'd like to tell you a couple things about Dewey. He was born in Vermont in 1859. He entered the University of Vermont as an undergraduate at the age of 15. he died in 1952, so he lived till he was 92 years old. And along the way, he published 40 books, he published 700 articles, he helped to found the American Civil Liberties Union, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the League for the Industrial Society, which spawned the Students for a Democratic Society. He was a founding member and president of the American Psychological Association, of the American Philosophical Association. He headed the Dewey Commission, which exonerated Leon Trotsky from the false charges issued by Joseph Stalin, who managed to assassinate him later after a couple of attempts in Mexico. He was a busy guy. He was a lifelong learner. And he had many really interesting ideas, famous ideas about education and growth. And one of Dewey's essential ideas was that growth, as it's conceived by education, and education itself, should never be thought of as means to an end. They should always be thought of as ends in themselves. And Dewey lived that throughout his whole life. He was constantly moving from aesthetics to logic to education to journalism to all kinds of intellectual foci in the things that he published and wrote about. And at the heart of his theorizing was always the idea that there's one essential thing that's wrong-headed in the way in which we think about education today in America, and which is actually detrimental to the creation of a true democracy. And that is basically the following. This isn't his terminology, but I think it's basically what he was saying. He was saying, I think essentially too often education is thought of as something that's done to me rather than by me. That it's something that is issued on a person by others who are deemed to be more mature and better educated than me, and then I simply follow suit. And I think all of us who have had kids who have gone through the educational system in this country know what he was talking about and know what he was trying to criticize. Another way of expressing this idea is that too often in education today, the basic ideas of interest and effort are severed from one another. And that the interest that people might have in various kinds of intellectual pursuit are not paid attention to enough, and so effort is compromised. And so now we have this initiative at Lasell College, the intergenerational initiative, where we're engaging residents of Lasell Village in lifelong learning and educational pursuits. And if there's anything that's clear, I think, and that will be clear to you as you're hearing about these wonderful projects that the faculty describe, is that the residents of Lasell Village very much view education as something that they do, that's done by them, as opposed to something that's done for them or to them. And their efforts are entirely driven by their interest. And I like that for two reasons. One, it's just wonderful in itself that we have these folks living at Lasell Village who are committed to growth and education in precisely the ways that the great American philosopher Dewey advocated for. But also, and this is particularly important to me, selfishly, as the chief academic officer at the college, what a wonderful model for our students, right? Who have people with them working on projects and in the classroom who are just there because they want to be, right? They just want to be there. They see education as something they should do, that it's their way of extending themselves in the world in continuously exciting ways forever, right? I mean, what's the average age at Lasell Village now, Paula? 85, right? And these folks are still motoring along and doing just wonderful intellectual and creative things. And you're going to see evidence of that today as they do those things in collaboration, of course, with our wonderful students. So that's enough for me. I'm going to hand it over to Joanne Monapar, Director of the Rosemary B. Fuss Center for Aging and Intergenerational Studies, who will kick us off. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you and with my colleagues to talk about some of the things that are happening around intergenerational exchange. Intergenerational teaching has taken a number of different forms at the college. Certainly residents can take courses in any area. I teach an intergenerational course that I'm going to talk about today where I regularly have residents, and in fact I have some of my students, previous and present students here today. But this semester, this year we've been trying a different kind of a format, which is based more on a modular approach. So what faculty across the curriculum have done is to design a specific focused activity that takes place over the course of a week or so. And we invited residents and got lots of different individuals in various modules. And so today the faculty are going to talk to you about those different modules. We're going to have a little bit of a change in the schedule because our first presenter is not here quite yet, but she's bringing drums. So that's going to be really fun when she does show up. So I'm going to ask Carol Emanuelson to come up and get us started. And the way we're going to do this is faculty are going to present to you what they've been doing in their courses and their modules for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions after each presentation, and then at the end we'll open it up for more general discussion. Okay. I'm gonna I have to move Hortense's stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Don't look at this yet.
Well, okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, what do I press on this? That one?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Emanuelson, and I'm an assistant professor in the fashion design department. And 2 of the students from my class are here, Chelsea and Yelitza. And we had an opportunity in the apparel product development class that I teach to have some wonderful women from Lasell Village join us for a module on consumer markets for apparel. So what we did in the class is it's a class of about 25 students, and we divided the class up into teams of 5 people each, which we do for quite a few of the assignments in the class anyway. And we were hoping to have 1 person from Lasell Village on each team, but we ended up a little thin in that department in the end. But we did have people join each team, and the teams worked together to solve a problem. And the problem was to figure out a way to market apparel or accessories to an older generation versus a younger generation. So the results were really interesting. One group took a look at Tom's shoes and figured out a way to market them. Another group looked at the Alex and Ani bracelets that are worn really by all generations. And this particular team took a look at a way to market Chico's clothing and product to an older generation. So we have our slides, and I'm going to ask the students to present their findings. I'm going to put you right on the spot. You want to start?
Good morning, everybody. So like Professor Manuel said, Yelitza, this is Chelsea, and our brand that we chose was Chico's, and we specifically targeted their jeans, and we specifically targeted their personal experience with shopping and everything. Next slide. So our consumer profile, as Professor Manuelson was saying, we chose to work with some residents from Lasell Village, and we chose specifically the mature generation, which is anybody born from 1909 to 1945, which I highly doubt will be targeting anybody from 1909. We chose them specifically because we said they prefer catalog shopping versus shopping in the store sometimes because of the one-on-one level that they get from their shopping. And we also chose newspapers because they always receive their newspapers in the mornings, they always receive their Sunday morning papers, and in their Sunday morning papers they receive their catalogs, their advertisements, and their coupons. And they also are a group that goes online to print out their coupons for the specific stores they like to shop in, for the catalogs they like to buy off of.
Also from our research, we also found out that they prefer boutique style shops, which is great because Chico's definitely has that atmosphere. They definitely love that one-on-one human connection, and they definitely love to have like a sense of loyalty with the sales associate that they're shopping with. They look to them as a source of information because they trust them and they know what will look good on them. Yeah.
So we came up with 2 advertisements, and this is our first one. This is a large print advertisement, and this one you would see in front of the stores in those moderately like big, like about this big advertisements, or the ones you would find in a mall walking around. And like I said, it's kind of hard to see from where you guys are sitting, but the top one says Chico's jeans for every body type. Again, we were trying to focus in on the jeans and on the personal shopping experience. And the second one says personal shopping services, flatter your mature figure. Like we said, we were trying to focus in on the mature generation, and we wanted to, you know, kind of like zoom in on them. And then, thank you. And then the bottom one says excellent customer service, again, because we were trying to promote that and make Chico's more of a brand that would bring in the mature generation and that would actually like capture their attention, because like Chelsea was saying, they prefer a one-on-one, they prefer a personal shopping experience, and that'll bring them back to the store and it'll bring more money to the store and more service.
And the second one that we did is a direct mail piece postcard that would come in the mail. So the front of this postcard focuses on, you know, coming in for a free consultation with a sales associate to look at their figure, clothing that would fit their body type, which was really important to them because, you know, as people age, they need more help picking out what they would like. And in the back of it also there is a coupon, 20% off your first purchase of $100 or more. So getting in people who really want to shop at Chico's, you know, having that incentive to come into the store and get a discount, and as well as a free consultation.
And so that's our little presentation. I would like to recognize a couple of the women who are from Lasell Village who worked in our class. Would you stand up, please? Exactly. And Rhoda was on the Chico's team, by the way. Congratulations.
So we do have a few minutes if
Yeah.
you'd like to ask students any questions about their experience, or Professor Emanuelson. Anyone have a question at this point?
Yes.
So was the goal, at the beginning you said that, oh, I'm sorry. At the beginning you said this category of shopper prefers shopping online, or, you know, or through catalogs. So was the motivator to get them in the store? Because the incentives...
Well, what we found is they're not primarily shopping online. They like to go online to print out coupons, so they're not really using e-commerce as a channel that they like to shop. They do prefer shopping direct mail, catalog, as well as going in store. That was what we kind of meant by that bullet.
So I assume that you developed these marketing pieces yourself. When you were doing that, if you were targeting folks from 1909 to 1949, did you look for older models for your product, for your publication? And if you did you have difficulty finding that?
Yes, it was extremely hard to find models that would kind of showcase what we wanted to advertise. So we did have difficulty finding that. I found a lot of younger models, but not models that were suiting this generation.
So if anybody's looking for a job. Well, so as fashion majors, as folks who are going into the industry, what does that tell you about a whole market that you might be pursuing?
Yeah, I definitely think the mature generation is an untapped market, and I feel like if Chico's were to go into this, they would have to hire models that would suit the mature generation, definitely.
And also one thing, they actually are kind of starting to go to that level to reach the matures and a little bit high, that generation, because they did hire a new spokesmodel, Diane Keaton, and they're kind of like, with her modeling, they're kind of getting more attention from the mature generation.
One more question, Paul?
Intergenerational study, did we determine that Chico's is the type of store at which an older adult would shop?
You didn't hear? She was wondering if you found that Chico's was the type of store that would draw in an older customer in general.
Yes, looking at their product, I definitely think the older generation could benefit from it. It's a very fashion-forward type of company, I believe, for that type of market, which some people, do want to still look great and, be on trend. They definitely have the jeans, which we were trying to focus as one of our key points. Their jeans are definitely comfortable for the target market, so that's why we picked the company.
Okay, we have a number of other presentations, so I'm going to move us along, but this is a good sign that everyone is so interested about the different topics. That's great. Thank you so much, and it was wonderful to have students here. We have some drums coming. If anybody wants to quickly get a cup of coffee, you can do that while we're waiting for some music to begin. And by the way, some of you are going to be making music. So, great. Okay. to begin? Okay. So I have your slides up here. I don't want to call you. What's his name?
That's fine.
Okay, we're going to begin again. So now, in the spirit of intergenerational exchange across the curriculum, we have Professor Hortense Giraldo, who is going to tell us about the work that she's going to be doing. Her module hasn't taken place yet, so you're going to be kind of a pilot test in part for it, and she's going to tell you what she's going to do and why she chose this particular activity.
Thank you, Joanne. And thank you, Jim Ostro and President Alexander and the overseers for inviting me to give this presentation on the World Beat Rhythm Project, for which I was kindly awarded an intergenerational program grant. So this reminds me of an old joke. What's the secret to being a good drummer? Timing. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the project, and then we are going to have, prepare yourselves now, an audience interactive event this morning. As Joanne kindly stated, we are going to be using you as sort of our guinea pigs for how this is going to work. So to begin, let me describe, first of all, I am Hortense Giraldo. I am a professor of anthropology in the social sciences department and of performing arts in the humanities department. And I know from personal experience that drumming is very good for you because I came to it as a hobby, as a way to decompress from the vicissitudes of my other job, my former job as a full-time mother and housewife. And so I did not begin my career as an anthropologist knowing that this was the track to take. I actually came to it because of my love of percussion. And this pursuit of drumming took me to West Africa to try to understand how drum communication worked. But that is not the focus of today's talk. Today's talk is going to be about the benefits of drumming for both students and elders and all ages in between. So, there it is, the intergenerational program project, the World Beat Rhythm Project. And the goal, as you see, will be to bring together 4 undergraduates in my Anthropology 101 Principles of Anthropology class and 4 village residents to learn some of the basics of drumming. Specifically, they're going to learn 3 world rhythms, and then they will perform them during the Connected Learning Symposium in December. Now, the outcome will be first of all, to let the students and the senior elders to, engage in this what I hope to be a fun project to learn these rhythms, to understand something about the context of each of these rhythms and how they're assembled to create a wonderful performative experience, and that they will then learn to perform in front of a live audience. This will be, by the way, I believe, December 10th, Tuesday, December 10th in Rosen Auditorium, 3 to 4 p.m. Just a little shameless self-promotion there. Okay, so it turns out that my gut instinct that this was a healthy hobby to take up has been backed up by empirical evidence. It turns out that some of the recent findings suggest that drumming can help reduce anxiety. Particularly, the study that I quote here is of a study of Latino youths who were taught how to drum on a regular basis in an after-school program, and they found that there was a decrease in crime and other, malfeasant activities as a result of their involvement in a percussion class on a daily basis. Other benefits have included the reduction of post-anxiety stress syndrome in soldiers who have come back from the war. And those who have been exposed to a constant or a daily practice of percussion have been found to lower their stress levels. And so I have found that this is actually true in my own practice and for my students, that beginning with warm-ups is a good way to de-stress all around. Finally, and perhaps most pertinently for the senior residents at the Lasell Village, there has been a connected link between a practice of percussion, specifically percussion, because one does not need to have musical abilities per se, but it has been associated with a reduction in Alzheimer-type symptomologies. And again, this has been backed up by empirical evidence. So for all these reasons, I felt that the World Beat Rhythm Project would be the ideal project to engage some of the Lasell community. Okay. So this is the next project. So this will allow us to segue into the next portion of this presentation. And for this, I will need 3 brave volunteers. And I will add, again, that you do not need to have any kind of musical background. You simply need to be willing to stand here and to hear something that I'm going to teach you. So may I have, yes, thank you. We need 3. Just come up here. Are broken down into 3 parts. Depending on which society, they can be labeled the father, the mother, the baby. They can be labeled the brain, the heart, the brain, the stomach. No, wait, the brain, the heart, and the stomach. And because of these designations, you can imagine how they can be interlocked in ways for the drums to create a kind of conversation amongst themselves. So today, briefly, you're going to learn 3 basic hits for a drum, how to get 3 different sounds from a drum. And the first one, and I'm going to demonstrate on this drum only because I don't have 4 of these drums, and the grant will help us, will provide us with more of these conga drums. So the first hit that I'm going to ask you to do, it might be good to take off your rings, if you have one, if it's possible, all right? This will take another minute, so I will talk a little bit about the rhythm that we're going to learn. It's called the samba. And does anyone remember, this is performed during Mardi Gras, which means Gross Tuesday. Does anyone recall why Mardi Gras is called Gross Tuesday? Does anyone? Exactly. The following day is Ash Wednesday, which is the kickoff for Lent, which is associated with austerity and fasting and all sorts of things. So Mardi Gras is associated with that last final party where everyone can let loose. And samba is the rhythm that everyone learns because it's very easy to pick up and it gets everyone happy. So the first hit you're going to learn is this. It's like a heartbeat. Yep. Right. Now that's the low rhythm. Okay, we're going to stop that. And then we're going to get the mama drum here to actually, no, we're going to get the baby. We're going to get the baby to do this rhythm here. And I teach my students this as a pizza song because that first rhythm is I like pizza. I like pizza. I like pizza. Right? Now the baby rhythm is I like pizza, I like pizza, I like pizza, I like pizza. Sounds like this. guys are good. They're good percussionists. The final rhythm that you're going to learn is the mother rhythm. Okay, this is also for this particular rhythm one of the rhythms that is the solo sound, and the master drummer for this particular rhythm will often be on the so-called mother drum, and this is a little bit harder, but this is what it sounds like. And then we are going to call this a day, and you all know, can be ready for Mardi Gras. Come, when is it, February, April, March. All right, so I'm going to be taking, these are called go-go bells. I got a ton of others, but we're sort of in a rush here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to riff over these rhythms with my rhythm, which is, no, this is good. Thank you so much. And there you go. I think this bodes well for the World Beat Rhythm Project. Thank you so much to our wonderful volunteers, and thank you very much for this, listening to this talk. All right, thank you, Joanne.
I don't know what I want more, pizza or to drum. I want both. We have time for one quick question, and again, at the end, we can ask more questions. But does someone have one quick question at this point for Hortense?
Hi, Hortense. I'm just wondering how, with the brain function, that this helps. Like, what is it that helps with anxiety and stress? Is it the fact that it's just repetition, or something different?
Here we go. That's exactly right. It is actually a very complicated cognitive neural system that happens, but there's something called entrainment that happens. And once people start hearing a constant rhythm, it helps, first of all, calms the nerves. It's associated with an increase of something called cortisol output, so that it calms the nerves. And also for people who have memory loss issues, the rhythm, the constant rhythm can actually help relax and therefore bring up other memories. And watching other people doing the rhythm can help them just, lock into the rhythm much easier. So it's been associated with memories coming back for people who have, who are drumming. Other than that, I can go into a more detailed, neurophysiological explanation, but that's kind of like the summary, a quick answer to that one. Yes, Mark. Yes.
My wife and I have a renter on a little cottage on our property, and he walks to work and can walk home. He's also a drummer, and we can tell what kind of day he had depending on how he drums.
Absolutely.
And if he comes at home at lunch and drums, we know it's not a good day.
And maybe after the drumming, he feels a lot
better.
better.
It'll be a good evening right after.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. And so now we're going to move from drumming to environmental issues. And Kim Farah, professor of chemistry, is going to talk about the various projects that she's done engaging older and younger students in environmental issues. Whichever one you want to use. There's all set. Yeah.
Thank you. As Joanne said, I'm going to be talking about engaging older and younger students in environmental issues, but I'm also going to talk about a lecture series that we did that was involved with my forensics class. I am a professor of chemistry, but unlike what most people think on CSI, it's not really police officers that do the forensics, it's scientists. So over the course of my tenure here, I actually went back and got a master's in forensic science and teach an undergraduate course in forensics for the criminal justice students, and sometimes also at a little bit lighter level for the general education science students. And next month, if you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, I'm actually going to present to high school teachers on inquiry-based forensics activities that they can do in their own classes, kind of tying in with what Jim was saying about getting students engaged in the act of learning. So I'm going to talk about, hopefully, here. I've been working on a series of projects that involve intergenerational activities, and what we've done, I'm going to divide this into two separate sections here, are intergenerational lecture series that we've been doing, and also citizen science involving my environmental students. So the first, last spring when I taught forensics for my students, we had a short lecture series on at the Village that involved forensics and sort of the evolution of various types of forensics, the first one being the evolution of firearms and ammunition. I was a little trepidatious as to how our attendance would be on that one, but I think something that played in our favor, though unfortunate, was the recent shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. So we did have a very good response to that. We had a lot of Village residents. I had an acquaintance who's an Iraqi freedom veteran who is also an historian, and he came and presented from the musket to the machine gun, the evolution of firearms over history. And we had some excellent discussion, mainly from the residents about questions pertaining to gun control, and we had a resident that actually had a cousin or an uncle that had developed a machine gun, and she was asking some historical questions related to that. So it was very interesting. Getting some feedback. Then we had a second series on computer forensics. Again, another acquaintance of mine is an expert witness on software piracy. So we talked some about that, and I'm going to move along because I don't have very much time. And this semester, my second semester chemistry class, I'm going to kind of flip it around, and I'm going to have my students present at the Village. I think we're doing that December 2nd. And they're going to talk about epigenetics and the exposome. A little quiz here. Can anybody tell me the difference between those two words? Anybody ever heard those two words? You'll be hearing more and more about these two words in the next 10 years. I can guarantee you, in 10 years, everybody will know these words. Epigenetics looks at environmental factors that affect our genome. Now that we've sequenced our DNA, we have to see what affects it and what causes the changes that perhaps can lead to cancer. So I have a group of students working on that as a research project, just getting information and trying to, make it more known to the general population. And then the exposome looks at the effect of all the environmental factors over the lifespan and how those are going to affect your lifespan. And again, as we get faster and faster data crunching, we understand our genome more, we're going to be able to look at what cumulative effects occur over the lifespan and how we can change those so that maybe we can rid the world of cancer. So very interesting topics, and they'll be presenting on them later this semester. The other projects that I've done are more hands-on, and they involve this concept of citizen science, which is getting amateurs and non-professional scientists out there to do some of the work in data collection. And so what we did, we went to a few different places. Drumlin Farm, which is actually a Mass Audubon Society wildlife preservation out in Lincoln, Mass, was concerned about their water quality in a couple of their ponds. So we had my students and also a Lasell Village resident who had a career as a chemist, chemical engineer, came out and helped us out with field sampling. And then another student had done an aquatic inventory of Haskell Pond, which is the pond which is at the village, and noticed that there were lots and lots of catfish in the pond, and they also were very unhealthy. And she knew that some of the village residents were concerned about the health of the catfish, so we went out there and did some water quality sampling. And then we also, as part of our environmental field sampling course, went to the village and did radon sampling. And radon, somebody must know about what's wrong with radon. See a nod there?
It's radioactive, so it's a gas, a vapor, I suppose. Gas, vapor?
Yes, gas.
Gas.
So radon is radioactive gas that's been attributed to a rise in lung cancer deaths, and it is naturally emitted from uranium decay from rocks, especially up in this area. We have a lot of granite, we get a lot of decay. So we wanted to look and see if there were any concerns with radon. So here's Haskell Pond. You can see some of the species that we took out of there. I'm not a biologist, so we didn't do very much on species identification. I'm a chemist, so we did a water quality testing of the pond. So it was kind of interesting because when the students went out and were sampling, they had questions from village residents who were looking out, wondering why we were taking samples out of their pond. So what we did, we went out twice, and ideally you should test at least 3 separate occasions because water quality changes with the seasons. And we looked at a variety of measures that are indicative of the health of a body of water. And I won't go through all these because, for lack of time, but the 2 big things, just to tout this, that we see with urban waters are a rise in ammonia and nitrate. Ammonium and nitrate are both nitrogen compounds. Fertilizers have a lot of nitrogen in them. They also have a lot of phosphate in them. So what we find is when you add all those into your water bodies, you get too many nutrients. You get algae that grows. Algae actually sucks up all the dissolved oxygen in the water that the fishes need, and then the body of water starts to degrade. And you also get algae cover, and then you don't get any sunlight down, which you need. So we did a water quality test, and then we presented to the Lasell Village. The Lasell Village Green Team was very good about being there, their sustainability committee, and we talked about all the parameters, why they were important, what the normal range was, and what the range was at the pond. Another test that we did at the village was radon testing. As I said, radon's important to look at because of increases in lung cancer. There's 2 ways to test for radon. You can do a short-term test or a long-term test. Short-term tests are from 2 to 90 days. If you're at a relatively high level, then you go into a longer-term test, which is a 90-day test. And that's important because radon levels can vary widely over the course of a year. So that was another test that we did, and we presented the results to the building managers there so that they would know. And the residents were welcome us into their apartments and also down into their storage areas, so we tested a variety of places. Happy to find out that there were no problems with radon, and we're actually currently testing buildings on campus. Another area that we're also looking to test soon is, this is a little data logger. These only cost about $20, $25, and they measure temperature and RH, and actually Carpenter, that the President Alexander mentioned, was just renovated. We're going to go into that building soon, deploy these data loggers in all the rooms there, and see how our climate control is after this renovation. I'm going to get students involved in that in this coming semester. So those are just some of the projects that we've done in the environmental forensics field.
Hold on. People have a question for Kim?
So Kim, how healthy is Haskell Pond?
I certainly wouldn't drink the water in Haskell Pond. We determined that was suitable for recreational use, but not for drinking water. And, our testing is limited. There was concern about pesticides in the pond. We can't do that sort of testing on our campus, so we would have to send it out, and we didn't do that at this point, but it would be interesting, probably about $200 to $300 to do like a panel of organic chemicals to see what might be in that pond. But we didn't find anything abnormal, except that, you have high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus that is leading to poor fish health. Plus, there are just too many fish in that pond. So if somebody wants to go out and do a little catfishing, they can probably do that. No catfish? Okay.
Thank you so much. Interesting. Very interesting. Can you talk to us just top line a little bit about some of the student learning outcomes? To me, this seems fascinating what you said, but I'm curious how this experiential learning, connected with the students and what they learned from it.
Okay. Anecdotally, the students told me they just love this class in terms of the field sampling. I'll talk about that. Anecdotally, I'll give you a funny anecdote about this. We did radon sampling, and we did not only the village, but we did some of the buildings around campus. So I broke the students into team, and I said, it's very important that you have the labels correct, because these tests are sent out to a lab, and then they come back with the test results, and it's based on the number on the container and the location. So we had about, I think we did 40 or 50 tests throughout the campus, and they came back, and it was like, guys, what is this? You have 2 at this same location, but I know you didn't put 2 here. So they learned the importance of really checking because our test results, some of them we couldn't use because they didn't properly identify the containers, they mixed up letters, or they didn't write the right location. So it was very instructive in that. And another instructive thing on the field sampling was, gee, how do I get into that body of water so that I can actually get the sample out of that body of water? So we had to find, muck boots, and, we didn't go out with a canoe or anything, but it's not that big a body of water. So anecdotally, they really thought that was interesting. And always bringing in outside lecturers that have expertise in an area is always really enriches the discussion. And I certainly learned a lot from both the outside lecturers that we had and the questions that the village residents tend to bring, because typically, at least I find, the students won't ask questions, but the village residents have very, very interesting questions as to, what's the best password to use on your computer, or how should you store your passwords, which actually, the forensics expert said, the best place is really, if you're going to have to store them on a piece of paper in your desk, because you're better off doing that than storing them on one of the online storage sites. So there's a little information for you if you miss that. All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. Oh, now put that one there. Okay, and now we're going to hear from my colleague in communication, Dana Jambek, who's going to talk about work that she's done with residents and students looking at media over time.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation and the interest to hear about the projects that we're doing with the village residents. My name is Dana Janbek, and I'm a professor of communication in the Department of Communication, and I'm starting my 5th year at Lasell. I can't believe I'm saying this. So the project that we did is called Media Over Time, and I'll explain it to you a little bit better in a couple of minutes. But first, I need 3 volunteers, and I promise you it's nothing as intense as what Hortense had you do. Yesterday, I was all prepared for the presentation, and then I realized Hortense was on the program. And I thought, oh no, I'm sure she has something very cool for you. So three volunteers. I'm going to ask you very simple questions. Thank you. 1, 2, and 1 more. Thank you. So, I'll start with you, sir. What was the first film you ever saw in theater?
It was black and white, and I can't remember that far back.
Thank you. Yes, no, not the same question, actually, a different one. How much do you share on social media? You have a Facebook account, a Twitter account. How much do you share?
Like personal information or?
Hmm?
Am I friends with anybody here? No. I keep it pretty private, so I wouldn't say all my personal information, but I share things. I'm not, sharing everything I do on social media.
Okay, so you think about it before you post something. Okay, thank you. Can you think of a very memorable advertisement from your childhood?
I don't know, I didn't have TV when I was really small.
Okay.
Probably the stupid Charmin.
What was that?
Ads, bathroom tissue. Don't squeeze the Charmin.
Don't squeeze the Charmin, okay. Thank you. Did you want to share an ad?
Alka-Seltzer, no matter what shape your stomach is in.
And you still remember the little line. Thank you. All right, so this is just a quick sample of the type of exercise that we did in my class. So I teach Communication 101. It's an understanding mass media, and basically all freshmen, all communication freshmen, it's a core course for them, so they're required to take it, and they usually take it their first semester. So in that class, we have about 24, 25 students, and we were lucky enough to have 5 Lasell residents volunteer for the exercise, and I have to recognize Rhoda Mann, who is here with us today. She was one of the volunteers who came to speak to the class. So we did the exercise over 2 days. It was pretty much similar exercise on both days, and students prepared questions relevant to their specific concentration. So in the communication major, we have students concentrating in public relations, advertising, sports communication, fashion communication, and radio and television. And based on their specific concentration, they prepared questions for the residents. And they asked them questions similar to the ones that I just asked you. And this conversation just went on and on for an hour and 15 minutes, times 2 on 2 different days. And from all the feedback that I got from the residents and from the students, everyone really enjoyed the exercise. The main outcome really is to learn a historical perspective coming straight from the residents. The chapters in the book, of course, cover the history of radio, the history of television, the history of advertising, but students were able to really ask questions about how was it like for you to experience media, not to have television, to rely on radio, for example. What was it like watching your first sports game on television? What was it like going to the theater? And all other questions that are relevant. So this is generally the exercise. I'm not sure, Rhoda, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you'd like to comment about your experience.
Cynthia and I were rather shocked at the fact that the students today don't seek out the news or have any idea of what's going on in the world today. When I asked how they get their news, and one young woman said she gets it on Twitter, and that they don't read a newspaper, but their questions were very good. And I think that, like in the fashion class that I was in, these young students don't really have an idea of how old or young we are. I mean, the question that they came up with was our first talkie. Well, we were born after talkies came in. But they were very perceptive and they were very attentive, and I was really pleased with that. It was a wonderful experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move along? Thank you, Dana.
Thank you very much.
So we're doing good on time then. Right, great. Okay, and now for yet another interesting journey. I mean, this is a journey actually even beyond the classroom, because Margot, who is going to speak about animal sketching, took students to Cambridge for the day as part of her activity. Want to use this or this? It's really easy for you. And here's your...
Hello. Thank you. My name's Margot Lemire. I'm a assistant professor of art and graphic design, and I teach art and drawing classes and other classes. And one of the things that I focus on in my classes is creativity. And I like to think of it as practical creativity. We do it in reference to our art projects, but I like to think the practice that we do extends beyond the art world into their real life. So when they are exploring possibilities in their own life, they have this example of having used creative processes in their artwork, which they can then extend for possibilities in the real world. Now, I'm not sure how to work this. Thank you. We had our project, the intergenerational project, was called Sketching Animals. And I called it sketching rather than drawing because it was done on a very informal basis. We ended up, I had my Arts 201 class, and we ended up with 2 people from the village who came actually at separate times, but they were there. And so this is Carolyn Chastney. She had responded when I asked her what she thought about the class. And she said, I learned a lot, I have a lot to learn. So this was the program that we had. We had 2 meetings, and at the first meeting, we had a lecture, and we talked a little bit about animal anatomy, how animals are different from people, and how they're the same. And I introduced a new technique of sketching with markers, and no one in the class had done it before. So we had a practice session in the classroom using the markers, and I'm going to show you the procedure in a minute. We worked from photographs because we didn't have any animals in the classroom. So we talked a little bit about the historical context. The practice of drawing and sketching animals goes way, way back. You can see up there, there's a cave painting, and the word art comes from the word artifice, which means to fool. And way, way, way back, dating back to history, people thought that artists were trying to fool you into thinking that was a real buffalo, those were real animals. So as a result, they thought that artists should be under suspicion. But you can see up there other artists. That's Alexander Calder's sketches of the lion. You see how very casual, quick, and immediate they are. And then there's that beautiful rabbit by Dora. So this is the procedure that we have, and all the animals at the Harvard Natural History Museum were holding very still for us. So it was very fortunate. And we started out using design markers which come in a variety of grays, from light gray to dark gray. So we start with the dark gray, and we do what's called a gesture drawing, which shows the energy or the action that the animal is doing. From there, we move to doing the contours, which is delineating the edges. So you can see the one on the left, you start to put the edges in, and then from that point on, there's an interplay between doing edges and doing the shading and doing any corrections that you've done, if you've made a mistake, you can fix it. You can see on the one on the right there that the drawing of the tail was changed a little bit. And drawing is about exploring and asking questions. And if you make a wrong move, you just fix it. And so there's the finished product. You can see done probably in less than half an hour using marker, pencil, and a little bit of pen. So here we are in the classroom. This is after the lecture. The students got to practice. Many of them had not used marker before, and they were all intimidated by it because they couldn't erase it. And here you can see one of the students practicing. He has a picture of a bird there, and he's working from that. I put him in there because he sort of comes into this a little bit further, and I'll show you. And here we are at the museum. And you can see there's Grace and there's Caroline in the North American Mammal Room. And if you've been to the Harvard Natural History Museum, it's just wonderful. It's all full of just these absolutely incredible animals to draw. And you can see right here, Caroline is drawing that little fox, and she's doing a beautiful job of it. And here's Chris, and he did a warthog. And Vanessa doing birds. And this is the one that I thought was particularly interesting because this became intergenerational. As Ryan was there drawing, these children came over, and they were just absolutely in awe of what he was doing. And I was eavesdropping, and they said, "How long have you been an artist? When did you know you wanted to be an artist?" And he was just taking it all right in. So it was really beautiful. And here are some of the finished ones. And these are the people that were in the class. And I really appreciated having this opportunity. It was a wonderful opportunity. So thank you to everyone, Joanne and everyone who was involved. I would love to do it again. Thank you.
Do we have questions for Margot?
Next time I do it, everybody come.
Ala's here, right?
Right. Yes, she is.
Can we get Ala's perspective?
Ala, would you like to share?
Say that again? Can we get your perspective on the experience?
Oh, I thought it was great. It showed me how much I didn't know. So great. Thank you, Margot.
Ala is being modest. She did a very good job.
I might say something about it. I thought I want to get back to Robin's question. When you had asked about outcomes, you may notice that, a lot of the things that we've been doing don't focus on aging per se, although in a minute my activity is going to be students talking about aging. But one of the things that we were really trying to do here is to be able to have older and younger students participate in activities of mutual interest so that they were together doing things in a very normal, common, typical way. And that has a lot of, very indirect benefits on how students view intergenerational relationships. And I think that's something that's important to bear in mind.
Could we put Ala back on the spot then? Give her the microphone.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear you. Say that again?
How much did you interact with students in this experience?
Well,
Did you give each other's
I have to admit,
give each other feedback? Did you learn directly from each other or just from the instructor?
well, I've been in other intergenerational courses. In this one, as Margot will attest, I was rather overwhelmed. But it's something I've always wanted to do. The students were so quiet in the right way and so pursuing what they were doing that there wasn't any idle chatter whatsoever. But it was wonderful for that reason. But it also convinced me that I'm going to go back for more. It was great. And in the other intergenerational courses I've been with Joanne, there was a lot of interaction, and the students were most chatty and interested and not surprised, but seemed pleased that we were there. And I've seen that at Wellesley College too, that the presence of older students in the class, only auditing, made the other younger students speak up much more. And it was a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Margot, I just wonder whether you had any sense of the differences. Are there any differences between the generations in terms of visual culture? And it seems to me the younger generation has grown up in a totally visual age, and more so than perhaps the older generation that from the village. And I wonder whether there was any confrontation with that difference.
I don't think so. We only had the 2 sessions together, so it wasn't really enough to notice if that was making a difference. But everyone in the class just sort of moved ahead and did it. Nobody said, oh, I can't do it, and nobody seemed to be intimidated by it. I think one of the reasons is when you work with the markers that we start out with, it's very light, and so it's sort of almost like putting your toe in the water. You know, you just sort of feel your way in, and by the time you're into the drawing, you're actually working on it. So that probably doesn't answer your question, but that's as close as I can come.
Well, Margot, from the older group, I think it's true, and it would apply to me, that none of us in the older group really grew up with as much visual material as young people today, and that's too bad. Because I think, at least in my case, it makes you think, well, gee, I don't know whether I can do this. And it's good to watch and work with the younger people who just go ahead and do it. But I do think it's different because we, at least in my generation, didn't have any of the visual training or even discussion that they have today, and I think it's wonderful. That doesn't add much.
But I think it does. It adds, I mean, you talk about exchange. This is really sharing both ways and learning both ways.
Olive, I loved your comment about learning, you know, and the exchange and the interchange with younger people, but people of other ages. I would just wanted to follow up on that and ask you if you could share with us what the impacts were on the students in the class of this experience, number one, and then number two, what plans potentially do you have to extend, you know, these kinds of opportunities? Because you said you only did this twice. Thank you.
Well, the students seemed to be very casual about it. It didn't seem to cause any ripples or any waves that there were people in the class that they hadn't seen before. They just sort of took it for granted. I did tell them in advance that we were going to have some guests, so they knew to expect it. I would love to do it again. We only had 2 meetings because that was, I think that was sort of the way that the structure was set up. But it certainly is a great project, and it would be worth you know, going much deeper into it, because the museum has such a wealth of material there. We could do a whole semester there and not exhaust it, and it would be just so wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you want to spend a few minutes?
We have a little bit of time, so I'm going to introduce Robin Perry, who's the co-chair of the Board of Overseers, to say a few words, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break, because I think everybody may need another cup of coffee or the bathroom, which is upstairs or downstairs. So Robin?
Mark, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It is so great to have a full house. Thank you all for being here, both Board of Overseers members as well as the faculty and the staff and the students of Lasell College. I just wanted to officially welcome you. I am serving as the co-chair currently of the Board of Overseers. And where is my co-chair, Shirley Galarani? Shirley, would you please just at least stand up so they can see that we are a great tag team? Shirley, thank you very much. So just wanted to take a couple of minutes to welcome you all officially. I had the pleasure of standing at the door to welcome some of you, and a few of you said to me, my gosh, this is my first time on the Board of Overseers. This is my first meeting. You know, what's the context and how can I contribute? So I wanted to just spend a couple of moments saying, officially welcome. How many of you in the room are new to the Board of Overseers? Just so that we know. Hands raised high, please. Okay, good, welcome. And how many of you in the room have attended one or more Board of Overseers meeting? Okay, how about 2 or more? Okay. Okay, so for those of us who have been at 3 or more meetings, let's make sure at the coffee break that we try to find someone who is new here, because a couple of people approached me and said, well, what's expected? So I just wanted to say, we all, as Board of Overseers members, have the honor and privilege of serving on the overseers. And what is our role? Our role essentially is to identify ways that we can support the college. The underpinning, Shirley and I worked with the faculty and the staff here to put together an educational program. By the way, thank you, Joanne and Steve and Jim Ostro. Thank you very much for putting this program together. We sort of said, could you do something so that we can showcase what occurs at the college, particularly across the lifespan? Because Lasell College, many of you or some of you may know, we are in the unusual position of educating individuals from preschool through the latest stages of our lives. So Lasell College, there are so many interesting things going on here. So the goal of this morning's annual Board of Overseers meeting is really to expose all of us to what is going on at the college, all kinds of interesting ideas, right? Has this been just fascinating so far, folks? Yeah, I see lots of smiles. So as we go through the second half of our program, I invite those of you who are overseers to listen with a couple of different hats on, if you will. Interesting programs going on. What piques your interest? Where might you want to get a little bit more involved with the program? Maybe one of you are former fashion majors. I myself, just to share a little bit, I am not a Lasell alum. I was very fortunate to be introduced to Lasell College and everything that's wonderful that goes on here in the late 90s. So I have served on the Board of Overseers for a period of time. And so we'll go throughout the morning's program. And then for those of you who are on the Overseers, I invite you, we will have time, about a half an hour or so, at the end of our annual meeting to actually have a conversation about gosh, what piqued your interest? What are your areas that you might want to support Lasell? And get some conversation going, just a dialogue about where do we go from here? Where do we as the Board of Overseers go from here? Okay, so sort of enjoy this morning's program. We have some other several other interesting programs. But the idea is, at the conclusion of the educational part, we will all have an opportunity to talk with each other about where might you want to be involved in some way with a college, introducing people to the college, getting involved in some of the committees, some of the programs, etc. How well did I answer the question, Michelle? Anything else I should cover? Michelle is one of the ones who met me at the door and asked the question, how can I contribute and what can we do here? So with that, Mark, should I cover anything else or should we go for a break and then? Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute break now. Thank you again all for being here, and we'll all have a chance to talk at the conclusion of the program.
Okay, we're moving into the last segment of presentations. I also wanted to say that we have a number of very different presentations here today, but we also had other formats or other activities going on, and I just want to mention Freddie Frankel, I know, worked with a class, Mimi Reddycliffe's class, on poetry, and spoke with the class about his experience as a poet, and read some of your poetry. And do you want to say anything else about what happened in that class?
Young people, all very attentive and listening. A good half asked questions. And I gather once I'd left, what they said to Mimi Reddycliffe was, "It's so good to hear a poet reading his own work," which I thought was a fascinating comment. I didn't hear the person say it, but Mimi reported it to me. It was a great experience. I enjoyed it very much. I haven't always been a poet. I was a psychiatrist all my life until I got to Lasell, and then I started. And it's a great occupation, writing poems.
Okay, and so now we're going to have Anne Vallely, who's a professor in fashion, and she's going to discuss with students and with a model the work that she's doing in her class.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Joanne. The study of aging is important to the business of fashion because annually fashion is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Style isn't about dressing to an age. Style is about confidence. The visual merchandiser's job is to present merchandise at its best for the purpose of selling that merchandise. Not only did the visual merchandising class want to research this concept in the classroom with village residents, but we wanted validation in the real world of retailing that our ideas were correct. Neiman Marcus' mission statement says, "We strive to be the best luxury and fashion retailer, and we continue to innovate, adapt, and engage our customer." As our retail partner in this module, Neiman Marcus's vice president challenged visual merchandising students to interpret the same list of fall trends for their cusp customer, the 18 to 25-year-old, and for their 50-plus customer. Today, I've brought you all the lists so you can pick one up on your way to see how challenged you might be for some of these examples. Today, chronological age is less important than in the past, but today, visual merchandiser's role is still to sell a dream, and that dream must be wearable. Students who participated in the visual merchandising module will now share with you the module process and how it will culminate at Lasell Village on October 29th. We hope that you'll all be there to enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Doherty. I'm a senior. I'm a fashion merch major.
Hi, and my name's Michelle Lett, and I am also a senior and a fashion merchandising major. So I'm going to talk about what we learned and what we gained from this experience. So during the intergenerational model process, groups were assigned different trends. Then each team analyzed their trends and collected images that best suited the assigned target markets. These target markets that we focused on were 18 to 25 as well as 50 plus. Each team worked with our village resident to discuss our visual choices. We then created storyboards for each of the trends. Interpreting some of the trends for the 50 plus consumer was very challenging. For example, rock or chic and borrowed from the boys. So as you can see, some of the styles of it were just too edgy to make age appropriate.
With boards in hand, classes went to Neiman Marcus to present our interpretations of the fall trends to senior management and the visual staff. During our presentation, we were congratulated for clearly capturing correct images for the fall trends. We also learned that some of the interpretations would be a little bit too conservative for the Neiman's 50 plus customer. In class, our village resident agreed with us that she would wear tall boots, however not over the knee boots. However, the Neiman's vice president assured us that many well over 50 plus Neiman's customers had embraced the trend and already purchased several pairs.
Even though in today's population, people are getting older, we still like to consider ourselves the forever young consumer. Wearing a current trend brings out youthfulness and exuberance. While the 18 to 25 market faithfully adopts the full-blown trend each season, the 50-plus women may select one trendy item, such as a red shoe, a decorated belt, a statement coat, or a flattering shade of purple. No matter the age, it is most important that the trend is worn with confidence.
What do Helen Mirren, Cher, Betsy Johnson, and our Lasell village resident Ruth Sillen have in common? They're willing to try new things and take fashion risks. 50-plus women can get style inspiration from not only TV personalities, but their life experiences. And now, Ruth and Michelle will be out in a minute, and they're here to show you that you can look chic and stylish without having to worry about getting older because personal style advances with age. Give it a minute to come out.
Yeah, you got that rhythm down.
Here they are.
And we are representing two generations here. Are you going to say anything?
Yeah, go ahead and tell us how you feel about the event.
Why don't you go on, I'll speak when you're finished.
And Ruth's going to talk a little bit about how she felt with the whole experience.
Well, we're both wearing the same jackets, student, Lasell Village resident, and we interpreted them differently. As you can see, Michelle has this bright, wonderful fringe scarf. I've got a more subdued polka dot. The bags are actually the same pocketbooks in different sizes. Michelle can wear hers cross-shoulder, I'm wearing it this way. And because consumers are so savvy these days, I would mention that the jackets are made in the USA, which is always a lovely thing to hear. And the pocketbooks are recycled material. They came from the Blue Iris, which is my daughter's clothing boutique right here in Auburndale. And I would invite you all to come in and say hello. But that's pretty much it. We just wanted to show you how a student and a senior citizen could both wear the same thing and cross the generation gap. And While I still have this, let me just say a couple of other words. How much I thoroughly enjoyed being part of the intergenerational program that the college and the village coordinated. It was just such a treat to be part of Ann's session with these students. They did a fabulous job, and it was far beyond my expectation. I hope that more residents will avail themselves of it, because I think it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So, and hello to all of my friends in the audience.
So once again, we would just like to thank Blue Iris and Auburndale for providing us with fashionable garments and accessories for our intergenerational models, and we encourage you to go and visit the store. We would also like to encourage more village residents to participate in the intergenerational modules with us.
Thank you.
Questions for students or for Ann or for Ruth?
This is a question for Ruth. How far would you go in terms of being fashion forward? Is there a spot that you would say, that's enough for me?
Well, I always find that the mirror is my best friend. I made the mistake once of taking a friend shopping with me. It was one of the worst mistakes I ever made in fashion.
I'd like to ask the students, how would you respond as a shopper to a presentation that showed something you were looking at as being multi-generational? Is that of interest, not of interest, turn on, turn off?
I mean, well, the way I see it is I like to, with my style, I think that it's good to have stuff that you can always wear. So when I do go shopping, I like to buy a lot more basic stuff that will still be trendy as in patterns and styles, but I can still wear it when 10 years comes around and I don't decide not to throw it away. So I like to shop for a long time.
Yeah, to add to that, I'm also the same way. I like to have what I would like to call classic pieces that in 20 years from now, if they still fit, which hopefully they do, 20, 30 years from now, let's crossing my fingers, that I can wear them still again.
So I guess everybody always keeps their inner child as well as their inner rocker chic, right, across the years.
No, I'd like you to talk to both of my daughters.
Thank you, everyone. And the culminating activity of this module is going to be October 29th at the Village, and we're going to actually have the interpretations from Neiman Marcus being brought to the Village, and the boards, all the boards, the students did a wonderful job. And last night at the leadership dinner, Don Fleming, the vice president of Neiman Marcus, was there, and he said if anyone told them that they didn't do a good job, just give him a call. I hope to see you on the 29th. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to finish the set of presentations talking about the activity that I did in my class, Aging in America, and you're going to have an opportunity to briefly participate in a part of that activity. In your books, I believe, or in your pamphlets, I believe there should be a handout called Speed Saging. So this class is Aging in America. It's an introductory psychology class. In the course, we explore a number of issues. We talk about the shifting age demographics, and we look at social, cognitive, and physical changes that are associated with age. And it's done in the context of lifespan development. I'm a social developmental psychologist, and the perspective that we take is lifespan, but it's also scientific. So we spend a lot of time in the class as we explore issues of aging, looking at what research has revealed about aging as a way to introduce students both to the issues that apply to them across the lifespan, as well as to increase their scientific or research literacy. Intergenerational exchange is fostered in a number of ways in this class to explore aging issues. It's designated as an intergenerational class. So in the class, I regularly have older and younger students. I have residents here now who are presently in the class and who have been previously in the class, which makes it a pretty unique opportunity to take a course on aging and lifespan development where you have people of different generations in the class. So it really helps us not to have a class where we're talking about them. You know, we're really talking about us, which is really a very, very important issue. I've even found that my language in the class has changed as opposed to always talking about older adults and younger adults. Now what I talk about is how we age. I mean, that's a very different, perspective, and that's something that I've learned by having the experience of an intergenerational class, and I think it's a really important lesson that I've learned, and I hope my students are learning. So in this class, it's intergenerational. Students also will attend events that are sponsored by the Fuss Center, our Talk of Ages intergenerational program. Students in the past have done intergenerational research projects on a number of topics, and like Kim Farah's class, students have also put together presentations that have been done at the Village. So what I'm going to talk about today is another activity that I've designed that's more of this module format that took place over several class periods. In the class, this particular activity was designed around the discussion of cognitive correlates of aging. And what I had hoped from this activity, the outcomes that I had intended, were that students would be able to describe what research has revealed about changes in mental activities that accompany age. And I also wanted them to be able to talk about specifically what might be some unique characteristics of how our thinking about everyday problems might change with age. And I wanted them to be able to ask new questions. Again, this is in the context also of what research has revealed about changes in mental activity and cognitive competency. The activity, I have to say, I have no idea how I came up with combining research and speed dating. It just seemed like a natural thing. But the way the activity is designed, in the research that is looked at problem solving, everyday problem solving, this is pioneering work by Freda Blanchard Fields. What she does is she has scenarios that are specially designed that are given to older and younger research participants. And the participants are asked to solve the problem, to give some advice to the person having the problem. And then those scenarios, those responses are then coded and looked at in a number of different ways. And so what I decided to do is to blend this into a more intergenerational activity. And so what we had is we had students and residents break up into groups. And I took the research protocols, the scenarios that were used in the actual research, and I gave them to the different groups of residents and students. And they read the scenario, and I brought my little bell. Okay, they were able to read the scenario, and they discussed the scenario for a couple of minutes. And I guess like speed dating, I don't know if that's what happens at speed dating, but then they had to jot down their observations about what are the solutions that were noted, which solutions did they think were good solutions, did they notice any differences in how the older and the younger participants approach these particular scenarios. And then once they did that, rang the bell again, and the students rotated to a different group. They read another scenario, they jotted down their observations, rang the bell, and they moved again until we had completed a series of all 3 scenarios. And then afterwards, we pooled our observations and talked about it in light of a discussion of other research about changes in cognitive capacity and changes in skills, cognitive skills and mental activity with age. So to give you just a flavor of how this worked, I'm going to have you Okay, discuss one of the scenarios. So you have the scenario in front of you. Actually, there are two scenarios. So what I want you to do is I just want you to read the scenarios and with each other talk about how you think adults of different ages, older and younger adults, might respond to those scenarios. And then we'll hear a little bit about what you observed, and I'll tell you what the class observed, and then bring you back to how this related to the development, I believe, of their research literacy, and I hope a more fine-grained understanding of age-related changes in how we approach everyday scenarios. So I'll give you 2 minutes to discuss the scenarios. Okay, so when you hear the bell, you're done. Why don't you begin? Okay, why don't we discuss what you discovered in your groups? And what were some of the solutions and observations that came up in the different groups? I see a lot of people were certainly talking. Some people were having great fun with the scenarios. Does somebody want to share the kinds of things they observed or what they came up with as a description of how you think older versus younger students in the class may have approached these problems?
I think on situation number one, the poker cheating, we sort of came to a general agreement that we would treat it a little differently at our current age than we would have 50 years ago.
And how was that?
Well, I said that I would simply fold my cards quietly, deliberately, leave the table, wishing not to have a contentious discussion among poker players.
We say we take out a gun and shoot the person.
That'll always work. Other observations for that scenario or the second scenario? Other differences?
Yeah, I think that older people tend to look for options rather than reacting instinctively. And I know that's certainly true in my case. Like in that poker situation, when I was younger, I actually had a friend who cheated like that. And he was a good friend, and these were penny ante poker games. And I finally decided, well, I don't want to lose him as a friend. So I took him aside, talked to him about it. And he says, well, I don't cheat. And that sort of goes nowhere, but we kept letting him in the game, but we knew what he was doing. It was kind of an entertainment, as it were.
Other observations?
Our group, that means mostly me, really thought ahead the context. As you got an older generation and a bunch of people were getting together socially, and it was much more the social interaction and everything like that. And if you knew that Harry was cheating and it made him feel good, you might throw him a card or two. Whereas the younger generation, we thought, would be much more competitive and argue over a penny.
Any other observations?
I discovered that I would never want to play poker with this table.
Have to check under the table for lots of things at that table, right? Well, wonderful. Your observations were, well, very much in line with what we observed, as well as what empirical research has discovered about how older and younger adults approach problems, or how our approach to problems changes across the lifespan. So what the research discovered, and I think that came out in what we talked about here, is that very often we will approach things in a very instrumental, direct way, and that's particularly common in young adults. So, they would say, okay, they would confront the person who's cheating and do something and call them on it, okay? But with age, what we also find is that adults endorse more what we call emotion regulation strategies. So they think about what's important here to sweat. Is it big stuff or small stuff? Or how do I manage the situation so that emotionally it's the best for me as well as for other people in the situation? So in the case of cheating, what we observed is, students would say, of course, I'd absolutely confront the person. But the older residents who were discussing it said, well, I would leave. This is not important to me. I'm not going to spend my time, my precious time, dealing with people who are sneaky and deceitful. And talking about the situation where a person has an affair. Students were more likely to say, as well as residents were likely to say, well, I'd confront the spouse. I'd find out what's happening. But older residents were also more likely to bring to the table, but I'd also encourage this person to take care of their own well-being. They need to find some support. Okay, they need to take care of their emotional well-being as well. And so, this mirrored very, very nicely what research has revealed, and it also allowed for, a very interesting intergenerational exchange where people could share different kinds of solutions which would only enrich everyone's approach to solving problems. So I learned a couple of things from this, or what I hope the class discovered is that when research has validity, it's very difficult to get students to believe and appreciate research when they're handed a journal article to read about it. Research is very complex these days, it's very refined, and so it's hard to get them to really believe that, what happens in the laboratory is also what happens in real life. So this opportunity to bring things to life in the classroom worked very, very well with giving them not only a better understanding, I believe, of research, okay, but an appreciation that it has merit in many ways. I think it also made more real for them the acknowledgement that aging is a process of change and refinement and adaptation, and that with age we have a lot more experience, and those experiences change how we think about the world. And we discussed that at length when we talked about, well, why would we observe these differences and how the different participants approach the solutions to the problems. The other thing that we came to appreciate, and I'm actually really excited about this because it's going to generate, I hope, a research project next semester, is we realized that in the research, the way it's done is that older adults are given scenarios to discuss, younger adults are given scenarios to discuss, and then they compare responses. Now that has merit based on what the research question is. But we also talked about, when you think about everyday problems, and how they're approached, where do they happen? They happen in intergenerational contexts, right? So they happen in the family. They happen in work situations. And so maybe what we should be looking at is how everyday problem solving is approached by comparing or looking at more closely what happens in intergenerational exchange, and how intergenerational exchange might provide even a better context to solve problems than doing it on your own. So I think that's a very exciting outcome that came from this activity. I also discovered that, again, developing research literacy in students is very challenging. And so trying to do anything that you can to get them to experience it firsthand, either by conducting the research themselves in the way that Kim has done in some of the projects that I've had students, or bringing it to life in the classroom where they can experience themselves being a participant in the research and seeing that how they express themselves and how they experience a situation is very similar to what happens in the, quote, laboratory. Intergenerational exchange, I learned, had a number of direct and indirect effects. Okay, the research piece, made great sense, it worked well. But I also noticed that, there are a couple of students in the class that are very quiet in class. And I noticed in this particular activity, they were very engaged. Okay, they were really, speaking with residents and moving through the different groups. And I don't think it was just because it was a different kind of a class, but I really believe it was because of how the residents were able to engage the students, how they were able to ask them questions and bring them out. And we talked about that before. I think Dana also mentioned that there was really something different that happened in this intergenerational exchange that helped to promote students' expression, who can sometimes be quiet in school or in classrooms, especially if they're first and second year students and they're just learning how to navigate this intellectual environment. I also learned that teaching is about taking risks, and it's also trying to figure out how to spell, because speed saging went from speed sagging to speed SAG. Nobody knew what that was, to speed saging. But it it takes risk, and sometimes it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, that's okay, because you learn what doesn't work, and when it works, it's really great. And I hope that today you all were able to see that, you know, some very innovative and creative ways of teaching are happening at the college, and we're very fortunate to have this unique community that challenges us to think about new ways to teach and new ways to increase our intellectual perspective as well as this perspective of our students of many ages. And so I guess from here we can take questions, and then I don't know if Robin wants to also come up and have more questions. Oh, Jim's next. So if people have questions about my activity or my class, I'd be happy to address them. If not, we can. Yeah, I have in this class, there are 15 students, and then we have 2 residents in the class, but for the speed staging, I had, I think, 8 other residents that we split up. And everybody knows the class sizes at Lasell are smaller, so my class is always limited to 17 students because it's intergenerational, so that we can make room for residents in there as well.
Did you ask them the second scenario about the affair? I'm very curious what the answers were.
Yeah, well, again, I think there was a lot of the gun kind of a stuff for the, you know, it's stuff. Now, there was this, you know, the students, you know, the first inclination was they confront the person. You know, just, you know, what's going on? But then as they talked about it more, you could see that the discussion started then talk about, you know, in residence, I brought this more to the table. Well, think about the person's emotional well-being. You know, also has to take care of, the spouse also has to take care of him or herself. So you get, everybody is very instrumental, but sort of that extra layer of thinking twice and figuring out what are the other options, as Irv had said, what are the other options that we have here? That comes with experiencing a lot of these situations.
Was there any discussion about the investment in the relationship?
Oh, there's, yeah. Yep. I mean, there were lots of issues came out, lots of issues. But what I was aiming for is that piece about being very instrumental versus this emotional regulation. I should also say the scenarios were specially designed so that they varied in how emotional they were versus non-emotional. So, you know, having a spouse cheat is a very highly emotional situation. And the work would suggest, and our discussion suggested, that because of experience and a lot of other things, the residents had, you know, more and different things to bring to the table for those very highly emotionally salient everyday problems. I also think, you know, another indirect effect, or this is a direct effect, I should say. It's indirect because it's not one that I was thinking about when I was thinking about my outcomes. But, you know, to see students and residents, you know, really debating what the best thing to do was. I mean, all of a sudden age wasn't important, it seemed. I mean, what was important is what was on the table and what they were talking about. I mean, you know, Anna's in the class. I don't know if I want to put her on the spot, but do you remember any other things that happened that we should bring to people's attention? Oh, Ann was in this, yeah. It was fun, I had a good time. Yeah. And, you know, there were, I mean, it wasn't always clear-cut, lots of individual differences, so it wasn't always like older adults say this, younger adults say, lots of individual differences, although you get this theme that reflected what happens as we age. So, turn it over to Jim now, back to Jim. Thank you.
That's great. I don't know if I should be surprised or worried that Dan asked that question. She's getting married in 2 months. In Puerto Rico, right? Yeah, well, congratulations. Good luck. Good luck to you. Ala said when she was talking that she discovered what she didn't know in her class. I thought it was a very interesting comment. We're really interested, of course, as I said earlier, in our students really being charged up by the things that faculty are asking them to learn, by being involved directly in the actual work of the fields they're studying, so that their interests are connected with their efforts, so their interests are charged up. And to have someone like Ala in a class who's excited about discovering at her age, excuse me, Al, but at your age, what you don't know, and that's a driver, right? That's a driver for your effort, is just a wonderful model for our students. I think it's really exciting for us in helping to enrich what we stand for at this educational institution. And of course, we believe strongly that by putting LaSalle Village residents in the company of our more traditionally aged students, that we're enriching the mission of LaSalle Village and facilitating what they're trying to do. What you've seen examples of in every single example that you've heard about today, the faculty have designed very discrete experiences for their students and LaSalle Village residents. When I say discrete, most of what you heard described didn't last more than 2 weeks. And in some cases, it was a description of just a single session within a course. So this is a very modular approach that we're taking to intergenerational contact within the educational settings that the faculty design. And that's a new model for us. It's a new direction for us. It's a direction which we think holds great promise for intergenerational learning at the college. And what I'd like to do, if I can, how much time we have now? Just a few minutes? I'd like to get your feedback on this new model. If you could sort of think in that more macro sense now, because that's what we're interested in pursuing now. We want to continue with this model if we think it works. And so we'd like to get your sense of, if you're willing, to give us some feedback on what are the pros and cons of this approach that we're taking now. What did you think about what happened today? What could we do differently? What should we do next? Yep.
What's the impetus for changing the model?
Okay. I would say the question was, what's the impetus for changing the model? Right? It's not so much that we're changing the model, it's that we're embarking on a new enterprise here. And it's a discrete, modular approach to intergenerational contact. We're not doing away with all of the other things that we're doing at the college. So LaSalle Village residents still enroll in college classes. They still participate in all kinds of interesting workshops and seminars and projects with students. We're trying to, though it's true now, take a more formal approach to discrete problem project-focused ways in which across the curriculum, LaSalle Village residents will have contact with students. I'd say there's two reasons why we're embarking on this new project. One, remember, we have a very problem project-focused philosophy of education at LaSalle College. And we also have an intergenerational goal here of lifelong learning and putting the generations in contact with one another. So we just sort of came to realize that to take a problem project-focused approach in the curriculum to intergenerational contact makes a lot of sense. It's compatible with our philosophy. The second reason, I have to be honest, is that LaSalle Village is it's a new retirement community. How old is it now, Paul? 14 years? It's 14 years, and with any new retirement community, the average age continues to go up. People become less mobile, and frankly, we've come to realize that if we want to have as much contact as we want possible between traditional age students and LaSalle Village residents, we can't only rest on the model of residents having to commit to a whole semester. It just doesn't work. I mean, it works, but it's not enough. So we want to present more options than we've had in the past for these kinds of contexts that I'm talking about. Yep?
May I add something to that?
Yeah.
When LaSalle Village was originally conceived, excuse me while I spill my coffee, the rest of the table, we conceived of the intergenerational study being the traditional model of villagers would enroll in our 14-week courses, and that all of the sort of coursework and continued learning would take place at the college. What has evolved at the village is a year-round menu of courses that take place in one of the 16 classrooms that exist at the village, so that residents are not only have the menu of courses at the college, but every trimester have about 30 courses of their own on site from which they choose. So a great thing is that many are too busy with other sorts of study in their lives in general to continue to commit to the 14 weeks. We have at least 12 or 15 residents who are doing that. They're in whole courses. But this is really, to use a developmental term, more developmentally appropriate for an adult living in a retirement community to take just a piece of time to become very engaged in a particular topic, rather than, you know, the more traditional model of the whole semester-long course.
I'll add one more thing too. I think one of the reasons we feel this model holds promise is it adds variety. I mean, if you want to keep, you know, students' attentions, you know, fired up and engaged, I think one of the key things that faculty discover is variety is good. And this simply adds another component in their courses, it adds variety. I got the sense that it adds excitement in the courses. It's a new ingredient for firing up students' interest, I think.
I just wanted to make an observation. There are two things you're addressing which I think are very important in this concept. One is that you're putting students, particularly, into a context that's unusual for them. That is, they're not just sitting with contemporaries talking about things that they instinctively understand. They have to stretch a little bit to understand it. I think the other thing is, particularly the speed business, what you're doing is you're putting not only the students but the elders in groups where they almost have to react and contribute. If you're in a group with 2 or 3 people, it's hard to stay submerged and out of the way. If you're in a classroom with 30 people, it's very much easier.
Yeah. I think it also has, I guess you'd call it different empirical gradations. I mean, I thought what Alice said also was very interesting when she was asked about intergenerational contact. She said, well, to tell you the truth, if I'm paraphrasing, I came into the room and people were really intensely working on their own stuff. And I was intensely working on my own stuff. That's true, but they were quietly and I think intensely aware of one another's presence. You know, it still had an impact on the environment, even if it wasn't as explicit and as obvious as your project. And I think both work. Both are interesting in the ways that you just described.
I would like to add what Paula talked about. For those of us who would like to do intergenerational classes, a full semester, twice a week, is difficult. Some of our classes are rather intensive that we take at the Village, with a lot of reading and work to be done. I liked the idea of being able to have a sample of classes. I took 2 that I would never have taken, and I loved them both. And it was stimulating, and I knew that after 3 weeks, one of them would be over, and after 1 week, another one would be over. I wanted to get involved in more, but I don't have the time. But I like this idea of having these short, modular classes, and let us get to try all different kinds of things and enjoy the students, and they can enjoy us.
If I could represent the students for a second and give the mirror image of what Rhoda just said, I haven't found any students who come to Lasell College because of the intergenerational elements we offer, because of Lasell Village. But I've found many students who discover it once they get here for a variety of reasons, because they have, meet people in their courses, because they work at the Village, whatever. This expands the number of students who will have such contact and develop relationships with Village residents, and invariably when they do that, they find it enriching to their college experience and to the way and the variety of ways in which they learn things and develop relationships.
What are we using, I guess, to measure the effectiveness of the program? You know, you can't obviously improve something if you don't have data. So, or what are we using? Is it student feedback, instructor feedback? From both ends, just curious.
Yeah. Joanne, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're using kind of post surveys for faculty and students about both the logistics and asking students, I'll ask students about, what their reactions. As we develop it more and we really think more about the outcomes, then we can develop better measures that are really looking at these kind of deeper issues of, does it change their attitudes? Does it change their awareness? Does it influence how deeply they've learned the material in a different way? I mean, those are certainly things that are important to measure. They're harder to measure, but certainly they're things that we'll look at. I mean, outcome assessment is just important in lots of ways.
I'd just like to add one brief account of my interaction with the group around the poetry. I gathered that before I was going to appear, the teacher, the instructor, talked about Dr. Frankl. And one of the group in the class said, "What's all this about Dr. Frankl? He's Freddie, you know." This is the guy who happens to be on the wait staff at the tables, so he knows the people that he deals with.
I'd like to add something else that I think is important about the exploration of this model. Lots of other places are looking at intergenerational classrooms. I mean, that's the contemporary classroom has people of a lot of different ages, and I think we have an interesting place and some interesting things to say about how you can do this kind of education in a unique way. I get lots of calls at the center of, people say, well, I know you teach a course. How do you do the course? What are some other options? So I think this is also important in showing people how you can integrate this kind of diversity in the contemporary classroom.
Jim, I know in the graduate program there are courses referred to as intensive, shorter programs. Is shorter a trend in education? Is it sort of interesting what Rhoda said, I never would have taken those courses if they were longer courses. Is that a way to get people to try new things, or is it based on the same logic as the intergenerational piece?
Well, an interesting question. There are so many things being experimented with in higher education now, right? With different length sessions, with the use of or the combination of online with face-to-face, and with more modular approaches to learning. For instance, in foundational mathematics at the college, we're going to take a whole new approach, which is a more self-paced modular approach. Now, the students will be enrolled in a course for a semester, but they'll be working more independently in a self-paced, technologically enhanced way on algebraic operations, as we're calling it, and it will have more project-focused options, which it should add more variety and, we think, interest and, we hope, proficiency for our students in mathematics. Kim has had a lot to do with helping to design that model. So that doesn't entirely answer your question. We certainly have now introduced in the summer shorter-term online options for students to advance in their undergraduate work. We're looking at now designing an entirely new term, a January term at Lasell College, where there'll be more opportunities for short-term intensive field-based projects, as well as course-based projects within a shorter period of time. So, yeah, we are thinking as an institution about adding more of that kind of temporal variety. Yep.
I just have a couple of quick thoughts. I just wanted to tell you that Ruth Sillen's grandchildren went to Hallway Child Study Center at Rockwell, just point of interest. So that would be intergenerational maybe. I also wanted to say that at Rockwell we have some of the residents from the village in our classrooms that come once a week, and I can tell you that for those of us that are lucky enough to have somebody in our classroom, it is absolutely invaluable. One of the women that we have in my classroom is was in education and in psychology, and her information and input and just chatting about the young children is truly invaluable. The other thing I wanted to say, as being in, well, never mind how old I am, but anyway, I'm not really into all this texting and Facebook and Twitter and whatever, which is all very in the machine and not face-to-face. And I think that this intergenerational project in the classroom has got to be invaluable as well as now, but when they're out of college and they're not doing their interpersonal thing with their buddies in college. So I think it's really helpful.
Well, thank you very much.
Jim, so Robin, do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we leave now, right? Okay. Isn't this now just overseers?
Yeah. Before our faculty and staff, though, leave us, the Board of Overseers, I just wanted to pitch it back to them. We as overseers are here in a very broad sense to identify ways that we can collectively and individually, but most importantly collectively, hopefully starting today, support the college. So I would just ask an open-ended question. We've had this wonderful educational program this morning. They've touched, thank you on behalf of all of us, right? Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us what's going on at the college and the interesting opportunities. So the question back to all of you, faculty in the room, is how can we support you? Are there some things top of mind that we might think about as overseers, ways that we can support you? Ideas, whatever. Because Jim, you asked us, what'd you think? How did you like the program, etc. So I just open-ended question. If there are some initial comments, great. And if somebody wants to follow up later with us, great.
I just want to say, I see our Board of Overseers as ambassadors to the outside world, and by you having a sense of, showcasing faculty and student work, talk about it. Go back to your cities and towns and get excited about it and talk to people about what we're doing here, because it's unique, and it's what makes Lasell so special.
Thanks, Ruth.
We're an enrollment-driven institution. You can donate money to. That would be very helpful.
Jim, geez, I cannot believe Dr. Ostro said that. Hold on, Steve.
Well, it was mentioned before, but I'd invite you to come to the Connected Learning Symposium at the end of the semester, December 10th this semester, and see more extensive projects that our students do, and offer your feedback. I mean, the question that came before, how do we know if it's working? You can help us assess this by giving us feedback from your perspective. We had a discussion with the Board of Trustees yesterday about writing and the importance of writing and presentations, and you can come, and some of the departments will invite you to formally give feedback about how our students are presenting, and you can help us to work with them to become better at what they do and more successful when they leave here. So come to the symposium. That would be a great way to be part of the experience here. Thanks.
Great idea. Thank you so much, Steve. Other comments, other suggestions?
I think ideas and volunteers. So any idea, I mean, if you were sitting here listening to a presentation and you say, I think I would do it this way, or this is an interesting idea, or I know somebody who would be really interesting to come and speak with my class because he or she's a writer. I think those connections are invaluable and terrific.
Great. Okay. Lovely.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Connections are invaluable. I was talking to one of the people on the Board of Overseers about lake sampling down in her side of the world, and sometimes it takes faculty a long while to establish an outside connection sometimes, and if we have that come to us, it makes our job a lot easier, and then we can work more on the project as opposed to just trying to make those connections. And I know all of you have a lot of outside connections, so those are always very helpful for us.
It's a great idea, Kim. You and I were actually talking about that, so thanks for bringing that up again.
The invitation is open to come to Connecticut.
All right, great.
Well, with that then, could we give them another round of applause? Thank you so much to everyone at Lasell. So I know the faculty and staff are going to take just a couple of minutes to leave us. So if everyone on the overseers could stay, we'll just sort of wrap up before, I can see that we're at 11:10. If everyone's willing to stay another 5 or 10 minutes, that would be lovely. So let's just give them a couple of moments. They have lots of things to do outside of presenting with us and talking with us.